And we're back. So the challenge before the break was I've got my stuff up in Blender. And by the way, we're COMP392, and it's winter 2016. It's week 4, lesson 4, part 5, or part 6. I don't know what it is, part 6. We're here with, we're looking at the example here, and all I have is one light, right? And here in Blender, I'm just going to escape here to go back to the solid view or whatever, right? Or material view. Take away this panel right here with the N key, right? And I really don't have even illumination. Notice if I'm using right now from a point lamp perspective, the type of lamp that I'm using is a Hemi. So that really didn't quite do it. It gave me some shadows as an example, but not a lot, right? Okay, and lots of energy, like 10 energy. I can reduce this energy down a little bit more. So if we made it to 1, you can see that it would just be darker. It wouldn't really do anything for us from a rendering perspective. If I went to render mode again, so Command or Control Enter, return, right? So go back to rendering mode. You can see again, so I can see the actual planet itself, but there isn't really a lot of shadows with the Hemi, right? If I change my lamp type, so if I go change, let's go back to rendered mode just as a quick rendering. And if I was to zoom in here, so you can see what it looks like in kind of a full rendering mode. There it is. That's what I'm doing. And if I was to zoom in, notice that no matter where I look at it, my planet really doesn't have, oh wait, what's going on? How come there's a shadow over here? Right, there's a shadow on the back end of the planet, but only on one side. And if I was to zoom in here, I'm doing this fully in rendered mode, right? So you can do this if you click render the mode. I'm in rendered, right, or render preview, if you will, right? And I want to zoom in on my planet 1. So I want to kind of zoom in. I'm going to press the dot key to zoom in, all right? So if I kind of zoom out, you can see that there is, even so, there's a little bit of shadow, but it's kind of not in the right place. Take a look. Right, here's my sun as an example, and if I was to pull it across here, you can see that I'm getting in the wrong spot. I really want it on the back side over here, depending on where the sun is, right? That's where it should be. So that makes me think, if I take my lamp away, and this is like really low, like 1 energy, so if I just delete my lamp, this is delete it, right? So if I go right click here and delete, right? That's one way of doing it, and it becomes black. And I want to add my other lamp. First thing I want to do is I want to put my cursor to the center. So I'm going to press Shift S, and I'm going to say cursor to the center. So it puts it into the middle of the game world, which is the middle of the game world is our sun, right? And I want to add a lamp now by hand. I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to click lamp, and now I have some choices: a point lamp, sun lamp, spot lamp, so on. If I make it a point lamp, don't have really any illumination, right? Okay, so undo. Again, I'll do the same thing. Lamp, sun lamp. I get illumination, but it's whack. Take a look at it, right? And even if I look at the actual object itself from a rotation perspective, if I go back to my rotation, from rotation, it's a 0-degree rotation. Is there a way of rotating a sun lamp? You know, it doesn't have a direction. And if I was to look at the, remember it's a sun lamp, right? So sun lamp is a directional lamp, right? This tells me that there must be a rotation, because if there wasn't a rotation, I wouldn't get half a sphere of shadow, right? And I can't see it because right now I'm in rendering mode, right? So a directional light might be the solution for you, right? So if I kind of click here and go back to solid mode, you can see that this little dotted line tells you where it's moving. It's kind of moving towards this way. So in fact, even if I put the directional lamp here, right, and up here as an example, I'm going to get the same shadow. And let's show you that in render mode. So render, right, same shadow. And no shadow here because we made it kind of a shadeless area, right? The same shadow. We're not getting any difference in shadow in here, right? Even if I go into rendered mode here, so if I press on escape and go back into rendered mode, right, you can see that I'm still getting the same shadow because my lamp is up here now, right? So I could render it so that it's perpendicular to the planet, but that just means it's going to be in one direction, right? So what happens when the planet rotates? Is it going to show on the other side? We'll have to test that. So, and we'll duplicate the planet to make it easy, right? So first, let's check this out. I'm going to just go back to solid mode, and I'm going to make this the rotation so that it rotates. I'm going to just use orthographic mode for a second and zoom out. And you notice it points downwards. I'm going to make it point to the right, right? So I'm going to rotate it. And again, I'm in user ortho. I'm going to look at this from the front. So here's my front view, right? Notice how you can't see anything from this view. If I was to rotate it again, right? It's hard to see because there's no grid, right? If I go from the top, here's the top view. You can't see anything, so it's straight down, right? So what I want to do is rotate it across the y-axis 90 degrees, right? So let's do this. So I'll say, y-axis rotation 90 degrees. Let's say it's the right direction. Well, that doesn't seem to be the right direction. I want it to go this way towards the planet. So let's go minus 90. So we'll say minus 90. That's minus 90. So there's minus 90, right? And so now it's pointing to this part of the thing. Even though the sun is, the actual lamp is not inside the sun, it doesn't matter because it's a directional lamp. All right, let's check this out. I'm going to go out of orthographic mode and go into perspective mode again, right? So here's my top perspective, and here's user perspective mode, and here's my lamp, right? Where's my camera? My camera's over here, right? And now when I render this thing, let's take this away for a second. And when I render this thing in rendered mode, because you can't see it right now because there's no shadows, I see that my shadow is here. This is good. This is what I would expect if I was looking at it from the side. What about if it's over here? Well, am I going to see the shadow in the same direction, or is it going to be the other side? And if it is, we've solved our problem, right? I'm just saying. What about if it's up here, or down here, or over here, right? There's going to be some differences, and we have to think about how we do that without killing ourselves with too much light, right? Or adding to the light that's already there. All right, so let's escape from that. So we're going to go back to solid mode again. And I want to take this planet, I'm going to right-click onto it, and Shift-D for duplicate across the x-axis. So I'm going to kind of keep it across the x-axis here. Kind of zoom out here a little bit. And we're going to put it kind of equidistant. And I need to change my camera's orientation, so I'm going to press, I'm going to go back to the N key again really quickly. And I'm going to click on my lock camera to view. And I'm just going to shift everything to the right a little bit so I can see both objects on the screen, and maybe a little bit up. There we go. So I can see both objects, and the sun and two planets. Because it could happen that my planets are rotating this way, right? Okay, then unclick my lock camera to view, and then take away my N, my numeric view, and take away my my transform toolbar by pressing T. And then now I will press this rendered mode to see what it looks like. So here's my sun. Well, that's not good. So I've got my directional light, and I see a shadow where shadow shouldn't be, because that's where the sun should be, right? Okay. So I could add, just like we said, we could add an additional light. And because some people say, well, maybe we can add additional lights. So I have, my sun, which is a lamp. So we'll call this lamp 1, and we'll kind of duplicate this lamp 1. So I'll click Shift D and press Enter, right? So that's where it's going to be, Shift D. And this time, what I'll do is I go back to my numeric transform, and in my numeric transform where I see it's minus 90, I'll switch this to 90 to kind of produce this other effect, and this is what I get. I kind of get a weird ass kind of look and feel to it, right? Because even though my lamps are in the middle, I get this weird happening thing where I got like a light on one side and a light on the other side. So that's not really a solution. So directional lamps, not going to work for me in 3D space. It's great from a single source, right? And especially if it was far away, it can work out. But when I'm looking at planets rotating across each other or around each other, around the sun, that's bad, especially if the sun's in the middle. What about anything else? What other ways? Anyone else have another solution? Yeah? Spotlight, multiple spotlights. So let's check that. We can do this now. I've already got my angle set, right? So all I have to do is change my lamp type to spotlight. So here's we'll call this lamp 2. My lamp 2 points to one side. My lamp 1 points to the other side. Let's switch them up and make them spotlights. Let's check this out. So I'm going to go to my lamp 1, which is pointing to this planetoid here, right? And let's change it from sun to spot. Okay. And let's take a look at the angle. Let's go back to solid mode, see what we're doing. So it's way over here, right? So that doesn't make any sense. I got to make it so that it's inside, you know, my planet. So that means that's got to be at 0, 0, 0. Let's just do that. Let's just set it so it's 0, 0, 0 by hand. There it is. And also my distance, my energy is low. My distance is only 25. Let's make my distance like 1,000, right? So it's really long. So it's kind of a long, you know, thing. So let's cover that angle. And that's one. And the other one is, can I change the shape, how big the object is? Well, yeah, I can, and I can do that by scale. So I can kind of scale it out. Now, depending on how I scale it, right? And again, I'm only seeing it from one angle. I can notice how I'm trying to change the scale here, but I'm changing it in all directions. But I can also, I want to change the scale so that it scales only in one direction. How do I do that? Well, I can, if I chose the Z direction, as an example, I can widen the area of my lamp, as an example, so my scale is very big, right? Now, still not 100%, but I can make it so it's 100. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a point in time where it stops moving, right? Because you don't see any differences, because it's pretty long. I'm bringing it back down to earth here so you can see the differences here, right? So anything greater than about 5 or maybe 10, I don't see a difference. So let's say change my scale to 10. So my scale on the X is 10. There we go. Only across the X. It's only one angle, right? So I got to be careful. So let's change it across the Y by 10 as well, right? There we go. And let's do it across the Z by 10, right? So it's 10, 10, 10. Oh, now it shows us really what it's looking like, right? Let's go back to 1. Okay, cool. So now what do I really have? Well, if I zoom out, and again, I can only zoom so far out because then I lose, you know, the way it looks like. It's pretty large. So I see, like, for example, the shadow that happens way over here will be, you know, I mean, it'll hit a lot of other planets over there, right? So let's try this out. And let me take away this lamp. Let me just like mute this lamp for a second. So lamp 2, we'll just turn it off. So we'll turn the eye off just for a second. And now let's see what it looks like in rendered mode. So rendered, there we go. And wow, so that even though we made it really large and everything else, from a lamp 1 perspective, with my energy at 1, not seeing much in terms of, I see a lot of shadows and I don't see a lot of light. So if I bring the light up to 100, right, even that's very bright. I still see no light on the actual object, even being far away the way it is. How about 1,000? Right? Still no light. Like I'm talking about, I mean, I'm looking at the objects here, and there's no light illuminating on them, right? Well, that's because my distance is 1,000 too. So if I bring this down to, like, let's say 10, right? Well, that kind of shores my distance up, but I still don't see anything right here, right? Still quite dark, even though it's a spotlight. All right, let's bring these values down, because that can mess me up. So let's go 1 and 1 from a Y perspective. So let's see if I'm getting some shadowing there, or some kind of some spotlight going on. Well, I don't see anything there at all. I don't see any kind of lamp. Okay. So anyone have an idea why this is happening? What a sphere. By the way, there is a way of making our spot lamp a sphere, which is very interesting, right? But still not getting a lot of illumination whatsoever. Let's undo that. So I'm gonna escape back into material mode. And you can see that it's not quite reaching it, and I'm getting a bit of shadow here, but I'm getting it on the wrong side. Right? See how I'm getting like the light on this side, but not on this side. It's kind of reversed, right? Which is exactly not what I don't want, right? That's lamp 1, and even though lamp 1 is showing my shadow and everything here. Again, if I make this longer, so my distance is 20. If I make this my distance 50, right? Still, you can see that it's completely dark on the side that it should be light. And the reason for this is because if I put a plane in this place instead, so if I press Shift A and add a bit of a plane, so let's add a plane, and let's drag this plane out, and then we'll spin it around. So I'll say rotate across the X-axis 90 degrees. Try that again. Rotate across the Y-axis 90 degrees, so we can see it. There's our plane. And I'll bring it closer so you can see what it looks like, and I'll zoom into it so you can see that my plane, let's just see if it's the wrong way around. So I'll rotate it minus 90. There you go. Notice how on one side we got bright illumination, but on the other side, right, we got nothing. Why is that? It's a spotlight. Well, let's take a look. Here's my lamp, right? My lamp is coming from my sun, right? And it's being blocked by this. Even if I move it closer, once it comes out of my sun, take a look. Even though it's quite transparent, if it comes out of my sun, boom! Now I get the right kind of light. But transparency, it messes it up. Here, nothing. There's some, right? That's a problem. So I can't use spotlights. By the way, 3GS, same, right? So that's not something that you could use and think that you're going to get away with it. Even if I have, let's turn my energy right down to like 10 or something, because that's more realistic, right? If I was to render this thing in rendered mode, you can see now that I've got the right shading this way. But again, if I was to move it across, you can see that this one's black. So I have to have like 6 lamps, 6 spot lamps that come from the surface of the sun, right, in different directions. And if you're too close to the sun, you're going to get like more. So this isn't really an option, right? Same thing if I made this a Hemi. If I change this light from a lamp to a Hemi, right, it's just going to illuminate everything equally, right? But the problem with a Hemi is you're going to get shadows in the wrong side. Depending on which way it's facing, you're going to get shadows behind on the wrong side, which isn't what we want. An aerial lamp might be cool, but an aerial lamp is being blocked by the sun. That's the funny thing. So if I move the sun out, right? So let's move the sun out. So I'm going to move it. Let's move the sun away, right here over here. But I don't move the lamps. The lamps. Now normally you would think that you would get some kind of illumination on this object, but you're not getting on this illumination on this object either, right? I'm pointing this out to you because this is your challenge, right? The challenge is not making the object spin around, right? We can use an ambient light to give us ambient light. The challenge will be using the appropriate light to get shadows for the A, okay? So what light source do I use that can light everything up in all directions, cast the right kind of shadows in all directions from the middle, and so we can see a sun object, right? And if you have the solution, say it, and everyone can have that answer. Do you have the solution? Point light will cast shadows? And what? Multiple point lamps, right? Yes? You did it? Single point light where? In the sun. Okay, so let's try that out. So I'm going to change this point lamp here. Make sure, because in point lamp in Blender and point lamp in 3GS might be different things. Be careful, right? It's just saying to you, right? So here's my lamp, and if I change this to a point lamp, and I don't see any illumination over here. How come? Look on this side. Huh? Well, the distance also. Distance is the distance itself is. The distance is 50.
So first I change the sun. So sun is total transparent. Alpha is 0.
Right. But what about the? Oh, for the sun?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What else? What about the? It's a point lamp. What's your energy level?
Energy level is 10.
10. How come I don't see it over here? It's rendered. Here's material, right? That's where it becomes. So you can see that there's there and there, and I got some weird illumination going on there, right? There's no other. Oh yeah, there is another lamp, but it's I've dimmed it. Actually, let's get rid of it here. I'll get rid of it for you, just so we see that there's no light. Okay, but look, there's nothing here. The first lamp, which is lamp 1, right, is a spot. Let's move it to the middle so we see that it's equal. There we go. And actually, we can just do that by going like this, 0, 0, 0, right? And if 10, it seems pretty dim to me. Like if I go to rendered, right, you can see them, but it's quite dim. If I was to make it more dramatic, and again, I'm going to make it so it's like 20, right? That's more like it. If I move the sun, this sun object back to the center, so I'm going to move it to 0, 0, 0. There we go. Here's 0, 0, 0 for you, right? It looks okay, right? And here's my plane. So how come we had a problem with it earlier? I mean, it looked like when we used the point lamp, We weren't getting any shadows, right? So here's the challenge. Let's take a look at 3JS and see what kind of lamp we can use from for us to, because this looks like it's going to be okay, right? I'm going to put this PowerPoint presentation very shortly. I'm almost done some of the changes. So again, some basic lights. What are the basic lights from a test perspective next week, right? And I didn't have a chance to sit down with you and look at all your work. But here are the basic lights: your ambient light, your point light, your spotlight, and your directional light. I kind of talked about that in Blender. We also have a couple other ones: hemisphere light, which kind of weird how it illuminates things, right? It's a special light, and the area light, which it's not quite the light that we want, right? From a description perspective, right? And this is something to note as well. I'm gonna make this big so you guys can read it on when you guys are looking at the video, right? The ambient light, right? Basic light, the color of which is added to the current color of the objects in the scene. So all it does is it colors the scene a little bit. So instead of making it pure black, you put an ambient light in the scene and it lightens everything up. It actually adds to the color of the objects. That's why I recommend an ambient light in your, and actually put it inside your assignment number 2, right? Point light. This light can't be used to create shadows. Be careful. In 3JS, this is a problem for you guys, right? We did a point lamp, works in Blender, but not so in 3JS. Spotlight. You can cast shadows with the spotlight. Directional light. You can create shadows with the directional light, but be careful about this, right? This one doesn't provide any shadows, the hemisphere light, and the aerial light doesn't cast any shadows either. So what are you left with? You're really left with either a spotlight that can cast shadows, right? And that's it. So be careful how you do this in 3JS. Although it works in Blender, investigate. You're going to have to look through it to see what's the proper light that you need to use. Any questions around this? I'm going to put this like I said, this PowerPoint presentation because it's quite involved. The good thing is I'm always putting out on GitHub some examples of some presentations that I've already got going on, I get example code online. For example, I've got example code for lesson 3, part 2, and part 3, right? And if I was to kind of preview that for you, so if I was to go to part 3, I'm working on part 4 right now. Here's part 3. This is interesting, right? Where you have a point lamp. Here's a point lamp, and if it's hard to see here, but it's actually going around. It's moving. The point lamp is moving around, right? And you can see how it's casting shadows from one object to the other, right? I can change the angle that it casts shadows from to the wider the lamp, right? I can also choose to see the lamp itself. So there's a debug view of the lamp to show us what it's actually doing, right? So that's kind of interesting how it's casting shadows, right? So take a look. It's actually up online. It'll actually show you how to do that, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about this early next week. We're going to talk about this, how it does the shadow casting, right? Now, this is not going to solve your problem, right? But what it's going to do is give you an idea, perspective about how things work, right? I can also choose to cast shadows or not, right? You can turn shadow casting on or off, right? Exponent, the larger the exponent, right? That I turn this like bright on, you're not going to see much in terms of shadows. The shadows are going to be affected by the exponent. If I turn this right down, you're going to see heavier shadows, right? The distance, how far, how bright the light is, and what the distance is going to also change. The intensity of the lamp is going to make it so that it's more, it's a lot brighter depending on where it is. You can see that as the light moves around, right? This is the light right here. As it moves around, this is what it's illuminating. You can see the brighter it is, the more it's illuminating around. So take a look at some of these examples that I've got up on GitHub, because they're going to give you an example of what lighting can do. Okay, and again, I'm going to put that PowerPoint presentation up there to help you guys out as well. Okay, any questions about the stuff we've talked about? I'm trying to give you an idea of some of the complexity about what we're doing. We're going to be talking more in depth about lighting. Next week, we're also going to be talking about Chapter 4. We're going to get into Chapter 4 next week again. We're about a week or so behind, but it's for good reason. It's because I want you guys to get a handle on your tools and have enough practice to do what you need to do. Questions, please, before we go. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to look at all your projects. I have a quick few minutes. I want to go around. If anyone wants me to look at them, please put your hand up, and I'll go around and I'll take a look at your stuff. Okay, thanks.